Hey, it's Never the Chess here, and this is the start of a series I'm going to make where I, as a beginner, look at openings, play some openings myself, see what I think of them, and whether or not I can recommend them to other beginners to learn, because I feel that there's some potential there. A lot of openings that are recommended by sort of other chess content creators are a little too advanced. Even when they're aimed at beginners, they're just a little too advanced. You have to know a little bit too much theory to really work with. I want openings where you only really need the first couple of moves, and then you're free to explore from there and then build upon the opening yourself. So what we're looking at here is the Caro-Kann. I'll just bring up my games here. So right here, this is the first game that I played. And basically, I intuitively followed the book moves all the way up until move 5. Right here, look, right here. I played the wrong move here. I played e6, when I should have played bishop to g6. But my point is, the only theory that I went into in this was the first game that I played using the Caro-Kann. The only theory I knew here was that e4, I play 6-6, opponent plays d4. Almost all of the opponents will play d4, but some of them will pull out a 9. And then I play d5. That's it. That's as far as the theory went. That's the opening I wanted to test it. Just those two moves. Go from there and see how intuitive it feels. I didn't want to go too deep with the theory. I feel like that's not good for beginners. It doesn't work for me. But in saying that, I did end up actually going through book moves. He plays knight c3. I took on e4, which was the right move. It's the book move. He takes on e4 with his knight. Then I played bishop f5, another book move, just threatening the knight. It just felt like the right move. Then he actually plays a knight to g3, which at the time I thought, like, whoa, what's he doing? I didn't understand the move, because he's getting his knight like way out of the way. I thought maybe he should go, kind of anywhere else. That didn't even enter my head as a move, but that's the book move. That's the classical variation. He's actually played a book move. Then I've played the wrong move here when I played e6, which is an inaccuracy. I should have played bishop to g6 and slid the bishop back. But the point is, I intuitively played up until this point. I played 3 or so moves without actually knowing any theory. They just came intuitively. They came right. You can see with the time, 7:35. So it took me a little while for each move. It wasn't particularly fast, but I did play the right moves up until this point. I didn't find the opening overly fun to play. This sort of feeling that the opening wasn't super fun sort of persisted throughout all of my games. But I just want to show in this game, it is a loss. It is a loss. Half of the games were losses, half of them were wins, which I feel is actually quite good. The first 5 was 2 losses, 3 wins. Then the next 5 I managed to sort of equal it out. But the reason for the losses hasn't got anything to do with the opening itself. The reason for the losses is because just of my own one-move blunders. It's just me losing the game. It's got nothing to do with the opening. Now, in this particular game, I actually played a brilliant move here, which was playing f4 right here. I'm not sure why exactly it was a brilliant move. It just seemed like the most obvious move to play. But I would say for this game, despite the loss, which was mostly due to this move right here, move 11, queen to h6, I should have moved the queen back to e7. The Caro-Kann felt safe. It felt like a very safe opening. Then he's actually played bishop to takes f4, which was a missed win. He actually had an opportunity to pick up some material here if he'd actually played queen to g4. So, we are looking at, look, you can see my ranking here. We are looking at beginners trying to learn an opening. And here I've blundered again. I don't need to go through all of the all the blunders. Then the next game that I played, playing the Caro-Kann, ended up being a Caro-Kann defense advanced variation, which I didn't know anything about. So this one ended up as e4, c6, d4, d5. Now here we are. This is exactly where I wanted to test. My opponent pushed forwards with his pawn, and I had no idea what to do from here. I did not know what the right move was. Somehow I played a book move. Developing the bishop out to f5. What I think I'm supposed to do, and maybe even was a better move, was to just push this pawn back. I have seen that in videos on the Caro-Kann. I'm supposed to just push this pawn forwards, but apparently this one was a book move. So we have played, the next move that we played was a book move. My opponent plays bishop to d3, which is also a book move. Then I've played an inaccuracy. I should have actually taken his bishop. So at this point, because I am just looking at the openings, I'm not looking at the whole game as a whole, because I lose a lot of them just from me, just failing. But intuitively, or sort of, not intuitively, but on sort of a basic level, this should have looked like an obvious capture. It should have just looked like an obvious capture. should have taken the bishop. He could take with the pawn. He could take it with his queen. But I just should have taken the bishop. It's just a good opportunity to take the bishop. Like, why would I not take the bishop? It's why did I put the bishop there if not to do something with it? And then what I did was just a terrible move, e6, just to protect the bishop. Like, it's too defensive. It's too defensive. Now, I don't know if that's my playstyle or if it's because these moves feel a little passive and they sort of produce a kind of defensive kind of mentality. I wasn't entirely sure there. Now, this game did end up being a loss. I'll just have a look at my notes to see if there's anything else sort of particular stood out in this game. I'm not entirely sure there was. There is blunders. Again, I have noted that I didn't find the Caro-Kann particularly fun to play. I know that I made a lot of mistakes, but it just didn't feel fun to me at this point. Now the next game was this one here, and it says we've played a Caro-Kann defense variation. Sorry, Caro-Kann defense advanced short variation. Now we'll go through that and see what that is. So it's e4, c6, d4, d5, e5. They've advanced. I played bishop f5 again because I had already looked at the analysis and I noticed that this was a book move, so I played the move again. My opponent's played knight to f3, which is a book move. I've played e6, which is a book move, and if my opponent had actually put his bishop here, I would have taken it. I did remember this from the game that was right, like immediately prior to this. I knew if this bishop comes out, take it for the next move. So those little sort of step-by-step ways of learning the openings is really a big thing for me. Like, is the opening fun? Is it intuitive? And is it easy to learn the little things that you need to learn and sort of develop the opening and turn it into something that really works for you? So my next move here, he took us out of the book here, actually, sorry. So he's played bishop to d3, which he says was excellent, but bishop e2 was better. Now from this point, I took anyway. Just learning the lesson from the last one. I took it anyway, even though it was the next move. I wasn't positive if following theory or anything like that it would be the best move, but I played the move anyway, despite it being the next move, despite his knight being out already. I still played it, and it was the best move. Turns out to have been the best move. He takes with the queen. Then I looked to develop my knight. Apparently, I was supposed to push this pawn to c5. I go on to win this game, actually. As we can say, I played a bunch of good moves. This was actually quite a good game. I'll just go through. Now, back here, I just want to go back here. This right here, this position that I end up finding myself in, is something I really wanted to speak about. I find it kind of difficult to develop in ways that feel productive when playing the Caro-Kann. I don't know where to put this bishop when these pawns come out, and sometimes I even push this pawn here, play c3. My bishop can't go here, he can't go here, he can't go here, he can't go there. It feels a little sort of claustrophobic, a bit suffocated, which makes me feel like it can sometimes be hard to castle and focus on king safety, that kind of thing when playing the Caro-Kann. I find oftentimes the positions end up like this, and I don't really like closed positions. They make it hard for me to feel like I can develop safely. I don't want to try and break things up with the knight. It's hard for me to sort of find any kinds of pawn breaks that feel like they'll work for me as a beginner. I'm sure there's better ways to play it, obviously. But I'm just speaking from like a pure beginner, intuitive sort of level. I feel the Caro-Kann can produce situations that get a little hard to develop your pieces. At least the way I play it. So far. Now right here I've played knight takes c5, which was a blunder. I blundered. There's a bunch of blunders throughout. There will be more blunders throughout this series. There's a bunch of blunders throughout these Caro-Kann games. But the point is just to learn the openings, see if they work for me, and if they're any good for beginners. If I think they're any good for beginners. Then we move on to the next game, which was a loss, and it was the Caro-Kann defense hillbilly variation. So this one was e4, c5. Then he's put his bishop out immediately, and now we're in a hillbilly attack, apparently. My next move was a book move still. I still did just play d5 straight into this because I figured, it still seemed like the right move. I mean, it's not really the Caro-Kann unless you get the d5 out there anyway. But I could see that this was an okay fork, and if one takes, I can take, and then, that can't take me back because my queen was there. I figured that was the right move to play, and it turns out it was a book move. My opponent plays the best move, so immediately, I think we're out of theory already. So it's like as soon as they play something just a little different, they play the bishop out here, I played the right move, stayed in theory, and then bang, immediately out of theory. Which can be good. I think it could probably be good for some people. Then we luckily play a few good moves. Eventually we sort of blunder, but as you can see, like, look at my position. I understand this is my playstyle. It's a flaw in the playstyle, but I haven't developed the bishop. I still need to push this out. I haven't castled. These are sort of disconnected. My bishop hasn't moved. Queen hasn't moved. I just feel like it's hard to sort of get things happening in the Caro-Kann, which might be one of the reasons that I find it sort of not overly fun to play, or I didn't find it overly fun to play at this point. Then we'll move on to the next game. This one was game 5. This one was a win. Caro-Kann without any name to the variation, apparently. Now, I play... So it's e4, I play c5. My opponent plays knight to c3. I still play d5. And then right here, my opponent swings his queen out. And I knew that it was bad. I didn't really know 100% how to exactly deal with it, but I tried my best. Just developed the knight, looking to attack the queen, sort of kick it away, and it develops a piece for me. He moves his queen over here. I don't know why. And then I just develop another piece. No, I didn't. Sorry, I took. I actually took, but I should have developed. This was one thing that I actually sort of noted, is that when I took here, it was actually wrong. I figured I took here because it's protected by the knight. But the thing is, if I was to take, he could take, and then my position is, you know, not very good. Then I've still got the queen. I'd have the queen here, just like, it wouldn't work. I'd have a queen and a knight right up in my grill, and I wouldn't have either of these two pieces, which is just no good. So I feel like right out of the opening, someone's sort of thrown a curveball, and you know, a bad move has happened shortly after. Should have developed this knight to here, which is way better. I actually noted this attacks the queen. It develops the piece, attacks the queen. Very good. I just felt like I couldn't develop it because there was the piece on c6, but you can still develop to d7, which attacks the queen. Much better move. Should have definitely have played that move. Then we done this exact exchange, and it just didn't work out. I ended up with the queen still there, still threatening what, I'm not entirely sure. He hasn't developed much, I haven't developed much, but there is a queen there, which was kind of annoying. I actually pulled my queen out here. I didn't see any better moves. Turns out it was the right move. I don't want to go on about like the whole game, all that sort of stuff. It's mostly about my thoughts on the Caro-Kann, just the first couple of moves, and do they produce situations where I'm doing okay? And I would argue that it does. Now, even in the losses, I'll just flip through these. You can see I made a mistake and then I start losing. But the position itself is okay. It's only plus 1.33. Then I blunder. White's winning 6, nearly 7, nearly up plus 7. In the next game, we can see I actually blundered a little earlier. Yeah, right there, I blundered. But before the blunder, I was winning. I was slowly developing into a winning position with using the Caro-Kann, minus 1.31. Up until my own blunder, I am actually developing myself into good positions that are winning. Like I'm slowly winning the game in like a sort of a you know, pretty relatively convincing kind of way. Like we can see here, just a few moves in, you can see my lead just slowly things favor black, slowly favoring black. Maybe not in this particular game. Well, right here we can see that, you know, because he played that bishop move, I actually played a bad move there. If I'd taken with my other pawn, and I actually considered that, I would have had a bigger advantage. So if I'd actually taken there, I would have maintained almost a half a center point advantage over the move that I played. Then he plays a bad move. I play an equally bad move. But, you know, it seems to feel safe to me. It does seem to produce strong positions that I just blunder away myself. And it does seem to provoke weaknesses. Like my opponents play lots of mistakes too. They will at this level. But they're not always playing against the Caro-Kann. It does seem to have people trip up. They do play bad moves. And I notice them when I go through in the engine. Sometimes I notice them in mid-game. Not all the time. It's usually just going through the engine. I'm like, whoa, I didn't realize that move was actually so bad. So here, White's blundered massively. And then I unfortunately returned the favor with an also massive blunder. So I was in a great position here. You know, I was winning minus 1.48. Then I just do a huge blunder. And now I'm actually losing plus 5.23. In this game, we can see my advantage is creeping up. It just slowly creeps up. It's not like a super powerful knockout. There's not very trappy. It's not a gambity type of opening. I'm not trying to end the game immediately. It's more about just building up slowly into a strong position, and then eventually just winning the game. Basically just based on skill almost. You're not trying to trick the opponent. But I'm sure there are traps and whatnot in the Caro-Kann. So we can see here, I've managed to get a weakness out of my opponent, and if I didn't play this rook move, I was actually up minus 1.28. Doesn't sound like a big number, but to see it slowly creeping up as I play is absolutely fantastic. Now there was more games. I'll link all of the games in the description actually, so anyone can just have a look at them if they want. But I do want to talk about my sort of general thoughts on the Caro-Kann now overall, because I did play 5 more games. Very quickly, my 5 other games was game 6 was a loss, was my fault. Once again, I developed myself into a winning position, but it gets a little worse. My opponent blundered, and then I just sort of did a bigger blunder, just like I did in that last game. Then game 7, I won on time. I was in a completely losing position, but I had built myself up into a nice, solid winning position all game until I managed to blunder. Still got the win on time, but it was just another sort of example of using the Caro-Kann, getting into a good safe position, despite only using those first 2 moves, like c6, d5 for black, and then just kind of winging the rest of it. Not any more theory. I haven't learned any more theory. That's sort of the reason. That's the point of this whole sort of series. It's just to learn the very basics of no being, and just see how it feels. How it feels as a beginner to play. And if I feel it's fun enough, if I feel it's good enough for me to use and sort of recommend to others, then I'll learn it. I'll learn the next couple of steps. I'll learn a little bit of variations from there. Then the next one, game 8 was a win. Was an exchange variation of the Caro-Kann. Was roughly equal position for a large portion of the game. Eventually, white had an advantage due to a bad move by me, but I ended up taking advantage of a blunder that the opponent had, and I ended up getting a back rank made on him. So that opponent played very well. I felt like that opponent was playing really well, and I did manage to keep it main sort of equal for most of the game, which I liked. Game 9 was a loss, which was the Caro-Kann hillbilly attack variation again. The hillbilly attack, if I'm going to keep playing the Caro-Kann, I need to learn how to deal with the hillbilly attack. So I don't have much to say here. I made a few bad moves against the hillbilly attack. My opponent played at a ridiculously high accuracy. I think it was like 99.3. I just felt suffocated all game. I didn't know what to do against it. I just had no idea what to do against it. And then in the 10th game, my opponent and I both played absolutely atrociously. I played what I call the smooth brain variation of the game. Actually, I might just bring it up, I might just actually bring this up, because this was just not how to play the Caro-Kann. It was an example in how not to play the Caro-Kann. Alright, so this is the smooth brain variation of the Caro-Kann. This is how not to play it. So my opponent plays e4. I'll just get the analysis now. e4, c6, d4, d5, knight to c3 comes out. I immediately make a mistake and advance the pawn, despite my opponent not advancing his pawn. I shouldn't have played this. I should have taken. Anytime the opponent leaves this pawn there to take, you should take it. But I didn't. Then my opponent actually takes the wrong pawn here, and it says it's a mistake. Then taking d takes e4 was an inaccuracy. I should have just pushed my pawn. It's just mistake after mistake. And then knight takes e4 was an inaccuracy. He should have taken my queen. We just sort of do the queen trade, but I can't castle and he can after development. Knight to c6 was a mistake. Bishop to c4 was a missed win from my opponent. e5 was a mistake. This game felt really not intuitive. I was just trying to develop my pieces. Something happened. Things fell apart. It didn't feel very Caro-Kann-y. I don't know how else to explain it. The game you can see it just goes up and down, It's just inaccuracy, mistakes, inaccuracy, mistakes, bad moves here, bad moves there. Eventually, I did actually pull it to a win, despite losing by quite a bit here. I'll just skip through until we reach a point where I actually start winning. Yeah, right there, my opponent makes a blunder. He just blunders this move. I'm not too sure what he was thinking there. And then I capitalized on this, managed to get my rooks involved. And then I was able to just start sort of going for a mating pattern, which I also blundered. But my opponent didn't capitalize on the blunder. I'll get to the blunder here. Right here. Bad move, f2 blunder. Bad move. Bad move, f2 blunder. Because he could have put me in check. and sort of made me have to sort of start leaving the position. But he didn't, and then he got mated right there. Even though he did develop his queen, I knew that I'd had him. I actually didn't realize that was a blunder at the time. I had no idea that was such a bad move. So that was just the smooth brain version of the Caro-Kann. Now, overall feelings on the Caro-Kann as a beginner. Does it feel like it's got potential for noobs if they can stick with it? I feel like yes, it does. It's a definite yes. The Caro-Kann, to me, as a beginner, feels like it has lots of potential. It doesn't feel like it's particularly packing a firepower. It feels more like an opening where you're just learning the game, getting better at the game, playing better moves on like a turn-by-turn basis, and then you eventually just develop into a great position. And if you can not blunder it away, then you'll win games. It does feel like that kind of opening. It's not about traps. It's not about trying to trick your opponent. And it feels kind of sort of easy enough to play, you know. I'm positive I could see success employing the Caro-Kann as my main defense against 1e5 as a beginner. The majority of my losses were from me making bad moves later on in the game. They didn't stem from the opening or even making mistakes in the opening. The openings felt intuitive enough to get through the first few moves pretty safely, which is really, that's what I'm trying to find with this series. I was able to develop intuitively into winning positions stemming from the Caro-Kann, you know, that is what I'm trying to hunt down. Is it something that can appear often enough to even consider learning as a beginner? This is a question that I really wanted to look at, and I feel like yes, it is. Every time I wanted to play the Caro-Kann, I got the Caro-Kann. No matter what the opponent plays, I can always play that d5 as a second move. Just playing c6 at the start, I don't think that means suddenly we're in like a Caro-Kann. I think you need to play the d5 and then start branching out from there. I feel like no matter what the other guy plays, d5 felt like the right move. It felt like a good move no matter what I was against. So yes, you can always get this position as far as I'm concerned. From my experience, I was always able to get the position. I could always play this opening. You could definitely choose this opening as a beginner and know you're going to get it. If you're on black and the opponent plays 1e4, you know you can play 1c6, and you know that on your next move you can play d5, which means you can just play the Caro-Kann. It's not some gimmicky gambit or a gimmicky opening where you're never going to get into the position. So it's an opening you can learn because you will actually get the position. So overall then, looking at it, it ended up being 5-all, 5 wins, 5 losses, no draws. All of the losses besides one were just my own bad play later on in the game. I had developed into decent positions, or even better than decent positions, in all of the games, even the 5 that I'd lost. One of my losses was against someone with insanely high accuracy, and I couldn't do anything. I didn't even blunder. I didn't even make any big mistakes in that game. But I just couldn't. It felt like every move I did was wrong. Every move was wrong, despite there not being any blunders or any mistakes. It was just weird. It was just a loss. The other guy just played like sort of out of his league. Yeah, overall, my thoughts are that the Caro-Kann isn't super fun to play. It's not super fun to play. It's not aggressive. It's a safe opening. It's a opening that you can get often. Every time that you want to play the Caro-Kann, you can play it. Every time you're faced with 1e4, you can get the position. And it does feel like it's absolutely rammed with potential. I would definitely recommend it to other beginners to try. But I understand that if the game's not fun to play, then you're not going to want to keep playing it. And I found the Caro-Kann got more interesting and more fun to play the more that I played it. I didn't actually like it at first. I was going to just can and just be like, I'm not even going to bother with the Caro-Kann. But I did it, and now I've got 10 games with the Caro-Kann, and I've only managed to get, a 4 or 5 with the Roy Lopez, which is the one I'm doing on white right now. So I've managed to double the amount of games getting the Caro-Kann as I have with any other opening. Even me starting the game with 1e4 on white, the Caro-Kann has come up sort of more than any other anything else. So that's it from me. I would recommend the Caro-Kann as an opening for beginners to learn. I absolutely would recommend it. I just want people to keep in mind that maybe it's not an insane amount of fun to play. It's not gambity. It's not aggressive. It's not up in their grill. The playstyle is quite slow. It is positional. And that might not be for everybody, but I feel like it's a good opening for beginners to learn. I do. Well, if you enjoyed this video, you can hopefully catch me on Twitch. I do stream. It's twitch.tv/neverthechess. Until next time, there will be more in this series. Next one should be on the Roy Loopers. But I'm going to just keep looking at openings, learning them, not in massive amounts of depth unless I really like it, and going from there. I will be playing the Caro-Kann more. I did start to like it more, and I felt like I started to sort of get a little bit better at it and get into the swing of things. So that's it from me. See ya.